Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special online event today called The Power of Qi Medicine. Discover traditional Chinese techniques to prevent disease and activate the healer within you. My name is Stephen Dinan. I'm the founder, president, CEO of the Shift Network, and I'm fresh back from China, and so really appreciating the power of this ancient practices from China to really revitalize our health, open new possibilities for spiritual practice, and have really profound implications for really our full living of our full destiny path. So I'm really excited that we have with us one of the world's great experts in these practices. His name is Dr. Roger Jahnke, and he's really at the interface in mind-body practices, wellness, integrative medicine, and a lot of Chinese lineage practices, particularly from Qigong, that help us to really apply some of the core medical principles to how we live in a really revitalized and holistic way. So, Roger, it's a pleasure and honor to have you here today.
What a pleasure, Stephen. Thank you so much. Long time no see, and looking forward to our time together today.
Likewise. Well, I want to let everybody know up front that we're going to have this hour with Roger, but we're also going to have a chance to go much deeper with him in a whole new program on medical Qi medicine, traditional Chinese techniques to activate the healer within you. So Roger's got a lot of depth in this material, and we're going to have a chance to have a full program with him, and we'll share a little bit more towards the end of the hour. So, Roger, I keep calling you Roger. I should probably be more formal and call you Dr. Jahnke. But let's first of all, let's begin with a more sacred start. I know your work is about our healing and health and well-being, but it also has a real spiritual depth. And I invite you to invoke a more sacred space so that we can call ourselves into full presence and awareness as we receive the teachings you want.
Well, thank you so much, Stephen. And just in the interest of time, we'll just ring this gong one time with a nice deep breath for everyone, deep relaxation, turning on the medicine within. Excellent, and I'm sending that out with a wave of Qi for all of our guests today. Thanks, Stephen. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, I always like to start these journeys that we take with a bit of personal backstory. It gives a little context for why you've dedicated your life to this work, to ancient Chinese practices, bridging them with modern mind-body medicine. I'd love for you to share a little bit about why this became such an important area for you to focus on and how it affected your own growth and evolution and healing.
Yep, absolutely. Of course, there's a whole life of little stories that could be told about how things happen. I'll start with my Chinese medicine practice, although it really goes back to my childhood, and we'll have that conversation another time, perhaps. As a doctor of Chinese medicine, seeing patients on a daily basis, sometimes over the years I would see more than one person at a time. Sometimes over the years I would see just one person at a time, experimenting with the whole process of how to, shall we say, maximize the patient visit. And over time, what I realized is that the people that I was seeing were not as oriented to Chinese medicine that you would hope, and thus they were seeing me as the doctor as usual, who is basically going to promise a fix and then fix them. In Chinese medicine, however, there's so much richness and texture and personal engagement, and as I discovered people being unwilling to engage in that way, first of all, that was totally depressing. But originally, I was so fascinated with the detective work of helping people to heal that I didn't notice. And then I began to notice these people, or many of these people, don't actually, care that much about learning how to be a more fulfilled individual through personal behaviors and choices that they make and so forth. And at the same time, I was teaching Qigong in a community-based class. And just to keep the story really short, I realized that 100% of the people in the Qigong class were absolutely fascinated with maximizing themselves, while somewhere around 20 to 30% of the people in my clinical practice were really fascinated with healing themselves. And it was just I don't know, it just made practical sense to move on and engage in this relationship with a community of people who were 100% enthusiastic about the possibility of turning on healing resources which reside within our own being, are produced within our own being, and frankly, don't cost anything because they are naturally predisposed to turning on. These resources, this medicine within, is naturally predisposed to turning itself on if we create the conditions for that. And so I just went full into Qigong and Tai Chi, gave up my clinical practice. I've been to China 10 times, absolutely fascinating, getting the essence, the deep insights and so forth for these practices. And I finally, and I'll leave it at this, I finally discovered that if I train teachers, so if I teach people to practice, I can do 30 people at a time, 100 people at a time. If I train teachers, then we can have an influence on thousands of people. And so we have a mantra that says, we train thousands to inspire millions to heal themselves for free. And what we teach at the Esalen Institute, the Omega Institute, all these places where we get to meet these people, we will be investigating out ahead in my relationship with the Shift Network.
Beautiful. Well, I think that overall philosophical framework of really, being able to heal ourselves is at the root of Shift. It's a self-empowerment paradigm versus what we've learned in the West, which is, somebody else external is just going to, give us a pill and try to fix it and make it go away, which often leads to recurrence. It doesn't really lead us to live our most radiant, healthy lives. So let's talk a little bit more about this concept of Qi medicine. So people, I think, have heard of Qigong as a practice, but they don't necessarily think of it as a kind of a medicine for your body that works upstream from diseases and helps create a systemic health. So let me share a little bit more about it from really like Qi as a medicine, if you will, for our bodies to help prevent disease too.
Absolutely. So here's how that goes. If we lived in China, we would be trained by everyone that we knew that the maximization of functionality of our physiological self, as well as our mental emotional self, and in fact, even infused with the spiritual features of ourself, are all referenced as kinds of qi. Here in the Western world, we don't use that word, and instead we use for our reflection on our personal selves, if we were reflecting on the nature of the universe, we would say something else. We would say cosmic forces or gravity or something like that. But we're very interested in our own capacity to be well, vital, productive, happy, at peace, free of the negative effects of stress, and so forth. And so in our culture, we call this function. So the function of the cells, the function of the blood, the function of the digestive system, the function of the neurological capacity to deliver impulses to the parts of the body that are doing the work. So we could use the word function. And when people do Qigong, particularly certain kinds of Qigong, you can feel something changing. And what I mean by certain kinds of Qigong is the getting into the practice and putting everything else aside. So our time together when we teach Qigong or practice Qigong is typically going to be devoted to the idea of putting everything else about our lives aside and just focusing on what's happening now, adjusting. And you can do this as I'm saying it. I adjust my posture, lengthen my spine, drop my shoulders, soften my fingers, and already I'm making medicine. In the traditional cultures, medicine isn't something that you get at a drugstore. Medicine is something that you own. It's something that's a part of you. So when we talk about a medicine person, or we say this person has big medicine, what does that mean? It doesn't necessarily mean that they own a big chain of drugstores or they manufacture pharmaceuticals. It means that they have insight, intuition, vitality, power, resiliency, and these are amazing components of human beings. However, these components can become exhausted and overwhelmed by the nature of life. And so Qigong comes in to support us in reestablishing harmony and balance and maximizing functionality, which means maximizing qi. And if functionality at its highest level is sustained through healing resources and empowerment resources that are produced within our own being, then that is a medicine. And in China, that medicine is called qi. I think for the purpose of our time together, we'll refer to qi and function so people can get used to the feeling of what that means. And I'll just say one more thing. That goes all the way from the tiniest component of our being, which the Chinese reference as essence. We would use the words telomeres, DNA, coenzymes, neurotransmitters. The essence of the person is the most subtle aspect of the physical self. And so the Qigong practices, these methodologies are directly focused on, number one, stopping everything else for a little while, and then turning on the medicine by focusing on the present moment, using what are called the 4 baskets of practice. The 4 baskets of Qigong practice are movement practices, breath practices, meditation and mindfulness practices, as well as self-applied massage. So putting all of these together in different ways at different times and deepening our relationship with our self and learning to trust our own insights about what we need to be able to maximize well-being, all rolls itself up into something that we could call Qigong, which turns on Qi medicine, which is the natural healing resources which are spontaneously produced within the human body when we create the right conditions and have the right mindset. And wow, it's just amazing how that goes. And you've been in China, you've seen this happening, you know that there's a huge, long, many millennia history of this. So this practice called Qigong to maximize Qi medicine has been refined over many thousands of years, not just 2,000, not just 5,000, but historically Qigong originates so far into the past that scholars cannot even tell when it started. It was originally a kind of a celebration of life, and has evolved itself in the modern world into a methodology for maximization of all the things that we've been talking about.
Well, thank you for that panoramic understanding of this work. And let's go into a little bit more about how it works. So as I understand it, Qigong is working with breath and with movement and intention. And so you're kind of creating a very holistic, it's more than just meditation, more than just mind. It's mind plus emotions plus energy plus. So share a little bit about how a Qigong practice engages these different levels and begins to focalize and move energy in the body.
Sure. And while we're doing this, I invite the people who are listening to just think through, what could I be doing rather than just sitting here? And you may even want to get up out of your chair and find a spot and just kind of listen in to the ideas that I'm sharing here. So those 4 baskets of practice are the essence of the operational definition of Qigong. And so we'll just start with the idea of adjusting the body and moving the body. Now, sitting up, lengthening, lift head, drop shoulders, soften fingers, that would be the stillness posture to be able to maximize qi or maximize function. Then moving, we can do thousands of different kinds of movements, and all of them are contributing to the movement component of Qigong and Tai Chi, by the way. So while you're sitting or standing there, you could be waving your hands around, and what that does is that it activates all kinds of functions in the body: blood function, metabolic function, lymph function, and so forth. Then we turn our attention to the breath aspect of the practice, noticing the breath, and then changing the breath. Now, most people are busy and breathing at about a pace of 16 to 22 breaths a minute. However, we have the capacity to slow the breath down to as little as 4 or 5 or 6 breaths a minute. And this has a huge effect physiologically, which we'll have to wait till another day to discuss. But for right now, a deeper breath. And before we're done, we'll do a whole breath practice that's very, very, very useful and very easy to learn and quick to do. Then there is the mind focus. And one of the best ways to focus the mind is to pay attention to what's happening now. So we bring our attention to what we're doing. If we're lifting our hands up, then we're paying attention to lifting our hands up. If we're turning our hands away, then we're paying attention to our hands turning away. If we're breathing in, we're paying attention to breathing in. And all of that, the secret of all of that, and this is one of the great secrets of Qigong and Qi medicine that we will be continuing to explore, is the whole idea that the present moment is the PowerPoint for how to maximize function. So in other words, if we're not focusing on the present, we'll probably be breathing very rapidly. If we're not focusing on the present, we're probably going to be, typing, watching television, thinking about people who owe us an apology, all the kinds of things that come into the mind when we're meditating. The power of Qigong is that it gives you something to do in the present moment that turns the medicine on. And then one of the most powerful aspects of Qigong, besides the body practice, the breath practice, and the mind focus, is self-applied massage. And so either as a part of the practice or following the practice or at another time from the practice, self-applied massage is a very, very powerful tool. And all of them, those 4 baskets of practice, they are all turning on the medicine within, the healer within, the maximizing the functional capacity of everything from DNA all the way up to oxygen exchange, the replacement of cells in the liver, in the brain, in the eyes, everywhere the body is constantly replicating cells. And Qigong contributes to the sustainability in life of this capacity to continue to replicate healthy cells. Well, that's the fountain of youth. And, if we had more time together, we would talk deeply about the fountain of youth. And then I'll say one more thing about this functionally, which it's kind of a quantum thing or a spiritual thing, is that when we create these conditions with the maximization of focus on body, breath, and mind, what happens is, according to the wizards, the shamans, is that we're opening a portal to the, shall we say, awareness of the presence of our eternal self. So the Chinese talk about the golden elixir of immortality, or they talk about the golden elixir of longevity. And the essence of the golden elixir, which is something that we will explore in many ways, is to basically get a hold of oneself and develop a relationship with this opportunity that we have to stop doing everything else, all the stuff we do, to stop doing everything else and do the practice, whether it's quiescent Qigong practice or whether it's dynamic Qigong practice with gestures, the concept of bringing ourselves into the present. And isn't it interesting, if we put the past in one hand and the future in the other hand and we bring our hands together, it's like a namaste. It's like saying, for now, for the duration of this practice, I'm putting on hold my association with the past and the future, and I'm bringing myself into a radical sense of presence, and that turns the medicine on. I hope I answered your question.
That is great. There's a lot of depth in what you're sharing, and I think it would be useful for us to maybe take a next step and have you actually demonstrate a 4-part Qigong breathing practice. And so I think a lot of people mainly associate Qigong with just the physical movements and don't realize how important and central the breath is, and also the sound as well. Since we opened with the gong, that sound is often a part of clearing and opening.
Yes. So just before we go, and we'll do a breath practice. It's a little inconvenient in the space that we have to do a movement practice, so we'll do a breath practice. But allow me to just mention that breath practice is when you see the people doing Qigong or Tai Chi and you see those movements, you think, oh, well, that's Qigong. It's about the movements. But what you don't know is that those gestures are linked to the breathing, and the gestures and the breath are linked to the intention of the mind, what the Chinese call yi, mind intent. So there's an interesting concept where the mind, the yi, directs the qi, or the functional capacity. So mind focus, when you see the people moving, what you don't see is their breath practice, and you don't see their mind focus. So we have the illusion that Qigong is a dynamic practice, which it often is. So the breath that we're going to do today is called the 4-part breath. And I'll just put it in context by saying 2-part breath is breathing in and out. We're doing that all the time. A conscious 2-part breath is a longer breath in and a longer breath out. A 3-part breath is a belly breath, then a chest breath, and then an exhalation. And a 4-part breath, you hold the breath for just a moment, and that's the one that we're going to do. And If we do it 3 times, it is very likely that you will feel the functional shift. If you do not feel the functional shift, it doesn't mean that your functionality isn't shifting. It only means that the concept that we're getting at is fairly subtle. And if we were to spend more time together, we could get much more deeply in to the concept of subtlety and sensory awareness of subtlety. And feeling, there's 2 types of feeling. The one type of feeling is sensory, like I feel it in my body, and the other type of feeling is emotional, like I have a feeling. And as we do this practice, be scanning. We don't have the time today to do a lot of investigation, of course, so let's just jump in. And so we're going to take a deep breath, first the belly, so breathe in belly, and then breathe in chest, and then hold for a moment. And then exhale very slowly. Through your nose is preferable, but through your mouth if it's more comfortable. And then breathe normally for just a moment. And while we're taking that normal breath, I'm going to just ring this gong, and we're going to relax and scan the body. Now breathe again. Big deep breath belly. Drop the diaphragm down. Big deep breath chest. Hold for a count of 3 or 4 or 5. Now exhale very slowly. Notice what you're feeling. Scan the body. I'm going to ring the gong again. Then just breathe normally for a few moments. Now, after we end with this next breath, we're going to take a few moments to feel what we're feeling, and then Stephen and I will commence back into our discussion. But you can continue by taking a 4th 4-part breath, and a 5th 4-part breath, and a 6th 4-part breath. And the key point is on the exhalation to scan and notice what you're feeling, both sensory and emotionally, like I have feelings feeling. 3rd time, big deep breath, belly, big deep breath, chest. Hold. Exhale slowly, very slowly. Notice what you're feeling. Here comes the gong. Now, in our classes, we would then have a discussion about those feelings, because one of the most important things is to notice that everybody feels something different. One of the greatest false ideas about Qigong is that you do it a certain way and you have a certain feeling. I've been doing this, my first yoga class was 1963, my first Qigong and Tai Chi class was 1967. I've been doing this for a really long time. And I've been to China 10 times, and I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine, and I've written a bunch of books on this. And so I think I'm oriented enough to be able to say that the whole idea that we should do things a certain way so that we have a certain feeling is absolutely incorrect. And I've checked this with like many, many master teachers. The secret to turning on the Qi medicine, to turning on the healer within, to maximizing function, to extending well-being, healing diseases, and living a longer life, and being more at peace, and finding our way into the portal of our eternal nature, is not something that's going to happen because somebody said you should do something a certain way. It's going to be because you trust yourself. It's going to be because you deepened your relationship with yourself. It's going to be because you believed in what you were experiencing and allowed that become an expression of your true nature. Stephen, back to you.
Beautiful, beautiful explanations there. I think what I'm wanting to get a little bit further deeper into is this quality of different parts of our body having different kinds of qi that we can either replenish or diminish as well. And so that when we're working with Qigong, we're also helping to replenish these different kind of reservoirs of different quality of energy that we need to really have the full vital health that we want.
Wow, that's a beautiful question, and it has a very long answer, which I will make as short as possible. Your key word, I think, was locations, but then you said reservoirs, which really starts to sound a little more Chinese. So if we go from the diffuse of the nature of the energy of the world, and then how it interfaces with the body, first we have what we would call a field. The Chinese call this Wei Qi. Wei Qi means the protective field. We could call it the aura if we wanted to. Then as the Qi comes in further, there's what we call channels and points, acupuncture channels, acupuncture points, Qi channels, Qi points. And those are locations, but they're also like antenna almost. And if we think about the chakras of the yoga tradition or the Ayurvedic tradition, those same points are acupuncture points on the center line of the body. And 3 of those points are known as the Chinese chakras, which are called, beautiful phrase, elixir fields. Elixir fields. And so we're going to open a relationship between ourselves and the outside world to replenish the field. The field is then going to replenish the points and the channels. And then the points and the channels are going to deliver the energy to the organs and the dantian, which means elixir fields. Oh, now, isn't that amazing? There's points in the body. There's one at the belly button. There's one at the heart. And there's one at the what the Hindus call the third eye, or the Ayurvedic model of the third eye, that are called the 3 elixir fields. The lower elixir field is associated with producing a medicine physiologically. The middle elixir field, which is called the heart-mind. Heart-mind. It's a beautiful concept. We got to have more time together to deepen into it. The heart-mind is associated with the intellectual, emotional self, the mental, emotional self. And the third eye, or the upper elixir field, is associated with the influx of cosmic resources into our being. You could call that aspects of spirit, or you could call that aspects of oneness, or our deep, deep association with all beings. So these parts, as you were saying, or locations, reservoirs, but also like pathways and rivers. Wow, I mean, the territory of the human being, when seen from the perspective of what the Chinese call the Qi matrix, is fantastic. I mean, the body disappears, and what shows, and of course we're not seeing it that way because our vision isn't set on the spectrum of seeing that. Our vision is set on the spectrum of seeing this, and this, and this. And we have a fine time with seeing all of that. Seeing the aspect of ourself which is unseen, which cannot be seen by the human eye of most people, takes some imagination. But if we look at the imagery of the Chinese, when we look at the imagery of the Tibetans, when we look at the imagery of the yoga community in India, and even when we look at the imagery of some of the Druid cultures, Native American cultures, African cultures, all these shamanic and indigenous cultures, we see something different than we see with these eyes. That's one of those ideas about having an eye which is sees beyond the visible nature of life into a more, shall we say, transcendental aspect of our being. And so Qigong starts often with, I don't feel good, my head aches, can you help me? Then it transitions to, well, I think I can probably help myself. That's not a body, that's a mind having a revelation. And so the body hurts, but then revelations and insights that we have with the mind transition themselves into new behaviors. And those new behaviors then have an influence on the body. And then as we go further into our true nature and deeper into the quiet of the practice, the portal to our eternal self or our spiritual presence opens up. And so these three, what are called the three treasures, the body, the mind or the heart, mind, and the spirit, and the chi of these three treasures are orchestrating and choreographing this beautiful, invisible, functional being that happens to be right here, parallel to the being that we can see. And when people do these practices and people say, well, you look like you're younger than you are, or you look better than the last time I saw you, you're losing weight. You can say, what diet are you on? I'm not on a diet. Why? Well, because I've tapped into a deeper part of myself. The choices that I make are less self-sabotaging and less self-destructive. And so there's a whole bunch of research on how Qigong classes that had never mentioned anything about losing weight for people who carry extra weight actually lose some. And for people who want to glow more, like your grandma said, beauty is deeper than the skin. And where do you get the glow? And the Chinese medicine tradition and the Qigong tradition has piles and piles of insights and ideas and practices for how to get the inner functionality to show up on the external self. Great question. Thank you so much.
Well, Roger, I love the philosophical depth that you have in this subject area, and I think it'd be helpful to go to understand a little bit more the sort of this. So you're really illuminating how when we work upstream, if you will, and replenish these different centers and open to a deeper sense of ourselves, and that's going to have down even on weight loss. I didn't even know that you incidentally lose weight because you're more aligned with the deeper energy system that you are. So I'd love for you to share a little bit more about the sort of the combination of a daily practice and what you do if you have a specific intervention that you're wanting to, generate Qi medicine for. How do you target that particular area or balance that with like working more systemically?
Yes. That's a gorgeous question. We will be learning what we call medical Qigong. And what is the difference between medical Qigong and any other kind of Qigong? The answer is that the person that's doing the practice has a medical interest or a medical need. And so you just said it a moment ago. Are we going to start with a kind of a general approach to things? And is that going to somehow make its way to the part that needs it the most? Or are we going to go to the part that needs it the most? And the answer is both. And here in the Western world, what happens is when we treat disease, we ask the person what are the symptoms, or we look at the blood work and ask what are the reflections that can be seen that we could do something about. What we don't do is go beyond that. And it's hard to go beyond that from an outside source. It's easy to go beyond that from inside. That's why we say we're going to investigate the possibility of trusting ourselves more thoroughly. Because when we trust ourselves more thoroughly, then we can ask ourselves questions like, how do I feel? And why do I feel this way? And what did I eat recently? And how much sleep have I had? And do I hang around with people that I really like? Or am I, do I have a job that I can't stand driving to and then can't stand being at? And what am I going to do about that? These are all things that other people can't do for us. So Qigong is about cultivating the capacity to be more self-aware and to trust what we learn about ourselves as opposed to doubting it. And then in indigenous medicine, which would be reflective of all the shamanic cultures, all the indigenous cultures, the practice of directing the healing resources to a particular part or a particular function always starts with a bigger picture. And so the simple formula for medical Qigong, which we will investigate more thoroughly, is you do any kind of Qigong, and then you use massage methods to deliver or direct the Qi. In addition to using massage methods to direct the Qi, we use intention and breath. And so breath plus intention, that's the whole idea of the mind directs the Qi. Perhaps you've heard the Qi goes where the mind goes, or the Qi flows where the mind goes, or we could say energy follows thought. Those are all classic ideas from indigenous and shamanic cultures. And so after we've done the Qigong, generally for the whole system, to maximize function and to turn on the medicine, then we do use massage practices, breath practices, and mind focusing practices to direct the Qi to the parts that need healing the most. So as you said, are we going to do one or the other, or are we going to do both? And the answer is we're going to do both. Maximize globally, connect ourselves with the resources of nature, and then deliver those resources to the parts that need healing the most.
That's a beautiful explanation. I love it. It's like it's very holistic to have the specific and the larger frame. One thing
Yes.
it might be good to have a little more explanation around is also this concept that you've mentioned a few times around an inner healer, and that you're accessing. It's not just something that's interior to us, that we're actually, this inner healer is actually opening a portal to a larger healing intelligence in nature and the universe. Is maybe just share a little bit more about how this inner healer in some ways is sort of our bridge to the bigger world.
Wow. Yeah, I'm just so glad we're having this discussion. And, I've had many people ask me questions, and this is one that just, for whatever reason, doesn't come up as much. And you're just that kind of a seeker yourself with, a huge background in investigating these things. And so that was beautifully stated as a question. Okay, so let's just think about it. How many dimensions are there? We think there are 4, but Newtonian physics, based on 4 dimensions, was deconstructed by Einstein and all the people from the quantum community who followed. The quantum community has come into an awareness of how it's restating that which was known by indigenous and shamanic cultures thousands and thousands of years ago. We know that humans were acting like humans 500,000 years ago and even more. And so this new finding that we are aware of 4 dimensions, but are actually existing in a multiplicity of dimensions, according to string theory, and not just one universe, but a multiverse. That means literally that there are other universes, and they're connected maybe or maybe not by wormholes or black holes and those kinds of things. So these ancient traditions who had insights about transcendental awareness of the being beyond the body are very, very common. It's just not common for those of us who grew up in typical neighborhoods in the modern world. And so both science and tradition tell us that we can develop a relationship with aspects of ourselves that we typically neglect because we just never had any input. Nobody ever said, teachers, sergeants and colonels, coaches, preachers and rabbis, parents, grandparents have not typically been the source, although I did have one grandmother who was very, very interesting, are not typically the source of this type of insight. And so as we settle into this insight, one of the things that arises is it possible that I have formulated myself in accord with what I see and what I hear in my life and in my neighborhood and in the media? And the answer is, of course, yes, that's exactly what many people do. And as people understand that there's a larger view, and then figure out a kind of practice, and of course, Qigong practice is one of those practices, for how to tap in to the aspect of ourself which is typically neglected by virtue of the social norms that we accept, we start to tap in to an awareness of presence that's very, very compelling. It's powerful and immensely compelling. And so I'll just say a phrase, and you can get the goosebumps from it. From all of my exploration of the Chinese and into yoga in Tibet and Native Americans and other shamanic practices and the Kabbalah and all of the Middle Eastern practices, and the Sufis and all these areas that I've been exposed to, but then sort of cooked into an awareness that Qigong is kind of like the top tool. That's for me, just for me. Have recognized an archetypal insight, which I'll share right now. And it goes like this. There is an aspect of oneself that is irrevocably well, that cannot get sick and does not die. Wow. So
I love that. I love it. Irrevocably well is a great phrase. I've never heard that before.
Isn't that a beauty?
Yeah.
So that's what the golden elixir is all about. When we go further into our time together, we'll be talking about, well, what is this golden elixir? What do you mean? And the golden elixir is it is a medicine that you cannot buy. You can only make it for yourself within yourself. So, we put those two together. The golden elixir is a medicine that you cannot buy, that you can only produce within yourself, for no cost, by the way, to be able to reveal the aspect of yourself which is irrevocably well, cannot get sick, and does not die. That, to me, that's like, whoa. And, first of all, eventually we have to explain, what do you mean does not die? And, traditional cultures don't have any kind of an idea of immortality that says you're going to live forever in the body you have today. That's just silly. Nobody would even want that. What they mean is to come into a conscious relationship with the aspect of oneself which is eternal, on purpose, with intent because we're allowed to.
Beautiful. Well, Roger, it's a delight to learn from you. I feel like you've got such a vast body of wisdom to bring through. I want to spend some time now talking about your upcoming program, which I know is going to be such a blessing for all who undertake it. So Roger has agreed to teach a program with the Shift Network called Qi Medicine, Traditional Chinese Techniques to Activate the Healer Within You. So this is, you can find details about this program at qimedicinecourse.com, and that's qimedicinecourse.com, qimedicinecourse.com, qimedicinecourse.com. So this is going to be a 7-week program, and it really gives you a chance to go deep into the practices and the philosophy, as Roger's really explaining, the marriage of your mind and intent and the field of your heart and connecting with this golden elixir within you can have profound implications. It's for your health, for your well-being, for your relational life, because you're resourced from within in a whole different way than with virtually any other spiritual practices available. So again, this is not a course that has prerequisites. So you don't have to have a whole background in Qigong. We're going to start from a framework of understanding that is open to everybody. But even people who are very seasoned on a path are going to get a lot of value from Roger and his unique amalgam of different lineages and traditions. So Roger, I'd love for you to share in your own words what people are going to get from taking this Qi medicine journey with you, and then give us a little tour of the modules.
Yeah, good. Thank you so much. You said it very nicely that there are no prerequisites. Even when we train the public, or even when we train teachers, I have to say that my experience is that the people who come with the least knowledge, but the most curiosity, are the ones who really just blossom from the experience. And so I've been doing this for a really long time, doing events at, Omega Institute, Kripalu, Esalen, 1440, all these places. And it's always amazing to me the range of people. People will say, this is the only time I had, and this is the only class I could get into. And at the end, they say, oh my gosh, that was so great. And then other people will say, I've been doing this for years, and I really derived some significant insights from this time that we spent together. So the spectrum, all the way from hardly ever heard of it, all the way over to fairly well practiced, is really a target zone that I work in a lot. And so we're going to start with the basic ideas, just as we've done here today. You probably noticed that we start with some simple ideas like just physiology and the idea of taking a deep breath. And pretty soon we take that all the way up into where have the ancients found this to take them. So something simple like just changing the pace from 16 breaths to 8 breaths a minute being super practical, but then also having that same idea take us through to the concept that doing that practice requires consciousness and focus, and to be able to actualize those 6 or 8 breaths a minute, we have to stay focused on the present, which is in the portal to eternity. And so the practical just goes directly to the marvelous at every point along the way. It's amazing. And so we're going to be doing these 7 weeks, and in module 1, basically just going to find our way into the concept of the most profound medicine being produced within our own being. And even though you already know that, probably everybody in your life doesn't. And so just taking refuge in that idea with other people who are also taking refuge in that idea and kind of soaking it in again is always a powerful experience. And of course, in each one of these modules, we're going to be doing Qigong practices. So we'll have practice as well as knowledge base, and then we'll also have discussion. and question Q&A, but Q&A is great, but hearing from you is very powerful. So then in Module 2, we're going to be doing what's called Discover the Core of Your Being and the Promise of Self-Initiated Transformation. Most people are not aware of the core of their being. And of course, in a way, we're talking about chi, energy, being our essential nature, but we're also talking about being eternal or immortal in some difficult to explain way that will then, shall we say, inform our lives. Imagine the difference in your life if you're just working it, or if you're working it in a context where you have studied yourself deeply. Now, how far do you have to go to study yourself deeply? You do not have to leave your chair to study yourself deeply. It's one of the most hidden resources in the world, that the false idea that you have to go somewhere to learn something when we could be learning so much by just staying where we are and deepening into that, and using Qigong methodologies, of course, is very powerful. Then in the third module, we're going to be doing the baskets of practice, going into the baskets of practice. So that's going to be body practice, breath practice, mind focusing practice or mindfulness, and self-applied massage. And then looking over the rest of the course at weaving those 4 baskets in ways that are meaningful for you. As one of the last ideas that has any relevance is when somebody says to me, well, I have this problem, what should I do? I have this problem, what should I do? And my response is always to do what you feel comfortable with, but to develop a relationship with that which you feel comfortable with, you have to try things out. That's why you would go to a Qigong class. That's why you would go to a Tai Chi class. That's why you go to yoga classes. People say, I like that yoga teacher, I never go anywhere else. I always kind of wonder about that. Do you practice at home? No, I never practice at home. I just go to a person's I basically go and do somebody else's practice. Well, how is somebody else's practice your practice? So the power of the 4 baskets of practice is to develop a sense of how to choreograph and orchestrate the 4 baskets of practice, and calling upon any kind of Qigong. Of course, we'll be calling on particular types of Qigong just because that's an easier way to transport the knowledge. But then, there's thousands of kinds of Qigong. In the 4th module, we're going to learn how to deepen the practice using the massaging and the breathing. So in the module before, we're going to be focusing a lot on the movement and the meditation, and then we're going to be working on how we use breath practice and massage. Sorry, I'm lost in the beauty of all that there is here to be talking about. So we'll be refining those 2, the breath, which basically becomes the engine of the whole process, and then the massage, which becomes the deliverer of the qi, using the massage to deliver the qi. In the 5th module, we're going to introduce one of the most amazing features of Qigong, which is called the 9 phases of cultivation and mastery. The 9 phases of cultivation and mastery means what phases does a person go through as they reach towards a level of greater cultivation and greater mastery. And these 9 phases are based on the wisdom of the humans that goes all the way back into all the shamanic cultures, to all the great archetypal ideals of the wizards and gurus and so forth. And then in the 6th module, we're going deeper into what's called alchemy. Alchemy is the producing of the golden elixir. In alchemy, you take rough ingredients, you put them together, and you heat them, and to make gold, to reveal the presence of gold. And in ourself, we use the fire of intent to bring to bear on the ingredients of our being to create the gold of ourself. You may or may not know that gold is one of the only elements that can't be destroyed by fire. And so there's a phrase that says, the gold does not fear the fire. So what is that? The fire of difficulty, the fire of complexity in our lives. The fire of intent brought to bear, that is present moment focused intent, brought to bear on the ingredients of ourselves to create the golden self, to reveal the golden self. There's a book called The Secret of the Golden Flower. We'll talk about it a little bit in this class. And then the final module is basically going to be a Qigong marathon, where we will be sure that everything that you've learned in the 6 modules is settled in. So we'll do some review. We'll review the practices, but we will also, with great focus and intent, use that 7th module, the end point of that 7th module, to really, shall we say, get there. And the there, of course, is into the golden state, get into the superpotentiated state, to get into the ultra peaceful state, to maximize the medicine, to be in the most profound healing state. So we could say more, but Stephen, I'll turn it back to you. And I'm so excited about this course. This is just, for me, when we say reaching out to the millions, this to me is one of those moments where we get into the range of the millions, if you will, with this very, very powerful information and practice. And thank you so much.
Oh, I love also the way you describe it, and some of the metaphorical connotations of like gold being unafraid of fire. And we have so much fire of change and tumult and politics and our culture, to be able to cultivate that golden purity in ourselves that just heals us and provides a resource. What a beautiful blessing and gift to ourselves and the world.
Thank you.
So again, for all those who are watching, you can read all the details about Roger's beautiful course at qimedicinecourse.com, qimedicinecourse.com. I'll mention a few other things about it. First of all, not only is it's a 7-week program, you get the 90-minute sessions every week with Roger, you also have live Q&A time and the opportunity to go into small groups to discuss. And we have an online Facebook community. You get videos, you get recordings, audio recordings, you get PDF transcripts. We give you all the different ways that you can learn this material so that you can really turn this into a practice that nourishes you on the deepest level. So we also have a number of great bonuses in addition to the main program that help to complement this. First of all, we have a 5-part video training called Qigong, Ancient Energetics Roots webinar. We also have a dialogue between Roger and Michael Gelb from the recent Qigong Summit. It's called How to Ignite and Sustain the Fire of Genius. Michael does some fascinating work studying history's great creative geniuses and marrying that with a Qigong understanding, essentially how to bridge energy and our creative expression in the world. We also have an extra bonus, which is available only until midnight tonight, which we like to do as a little extra gift to you to go to the page now at qimedicinecourse.com, qimedicinecourse.com, and give it a read, tune in. If you're feeling like this is the right next step for you, then you've got extra incentive to do so. So today's extra bonus is the top 5 Qigong Global Summit recordings, which are from our 2018 summit. We had some amazing teachers. So check out the page and you can see more details about those premier teachers. So we've kept the investment really accessible for this program. It's a 7-week program. All the bonuses, just 3 payments of $109, or you save about 10% when you pay in full at $297. So it's really a lot of value, and this is very much a teach you to fish kind of program. So it's not just about some short-term inspiration that fades, but about incorporating a set of practices that help you work with your breath and your energy and your body in a whole new way, and really activate this golden elixir that can be so curative for you and also preventative of future issues as well. So it's a great program, highly recommend it. Roger's one of the most seasoned teachers offering this work that really blends the best of the East with the Western sensibilities and medical sensibilities as well. So Roger, what a great hour we've had with you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Anything that's still on your heart that you want to share with folks who are considering joining you for the Qi medicine journey?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Just to take this opportunity to connect with each one of you really deeply, not just personally, but even transpersonally. At that point in the world, however you describe it, we are one, connected and associated in deep, rich ways that can hardly be calculated by normal mathematics or even normal language. And for me to have this opportunity to meet you in the context where we'll be able to see each other and have conversations, not just information downloads, but conversations, and to get into some of the deeper parts of why you're interested in maximizing yourself, in transforming yourself, in trusting yourself more deeply. And I'm so excited about this. This is a really powerful, powerful opportunity for me and to get to know you. And by the way, if you feel comfortable about it, reach out to friends and let's have a big, that's going to be like a Qi party, of course. But the richness is so much more profound than that. It's kind of like, well, it's a Qi revolution. It's a Qi revolution. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. I love that, the Qi revolution. Well, one thing I forgot to mention, the course does start on November 28th. It's going to run on Wednesdays at noon Pacific. Even if you can't make the live time, you can still get the full value. You can see all the details at qimedicinecourse.com, qimedicinecourse.com. And when you sign up by midnight tonight, you get the extra top 5 Qigong Summit Global Summit recordings. So you're in for a treat, a Qi party, a Qi revolution, and a lot of profound insights and deep practices to heal yourself and really shine with that golden radiance that is at your core, the healer within. So thank you, Roger. Thank you all for joining. Let's all go forth, practice our breath, practice our intention.
Thank you, everyone. Wish you well.
Open up. Many blessings. And again, the URL for you to get registered is qimedicinecourse.com, qimedicinecourse.com. Thank you.